Hey Frontline fans, welcome back to Comic Frontline, and fans, you're back with me, Mike Spider Slayer, getting ready to discuss the Season 7 premiere of The Walking Dead. That's right, guys. A lot of you fans know that I'm a huge Walking Dead fan, and I've been waiting for this for a very long time. We finally got to see Negan and the end of the season of Season 6, and then here now we get to see a full episode with him in it. And I can honestly tell you, at the end of last season, it was the most intense last like 10 minutes that I have ever seen. Now, in this episode, the whole episode had me on the edge of my seat, because not necessarily was this episode really about the death, because in many ways, you already kind of had an idea of maybe who would die. There was a lot of speculations, a lot of talk, but it was really more of the homecoming here of Negan, basically, on how Jeffrey Dean Morgan would really play the character throughout the entire episode. And I thought he did a beautiful job. The casting on this character is spot on. If you take the comic book and you read the comic for yourself, a lot of the lines that were in last night's episode or in Sunday night's episode of this were straight out of the comic book, and he did it brilliantly. When I saw the death of Glenn, I honestly, when I saw Abraham get killed in the episode, because obviously now these are the two characters that got killed, I was like, okay, Abraham's killed, but I felt that there was a loss, that there was something missing. Abraham's not a strong enough character to change the show's dimension, to make it worthwhile. So I felt there's got to be something else. And sure enough, when Daryl acts out in the episode, we wound up seeing Negan saying, you know, the first one was a freebie, and that shit stops here. And he took no shit, and he sits there and he cracks Glenn in the skull, and we see, just like in the comic book, where he sits there and is calling out the words, Maggie, you know, and it's just like, it's straight out of the comic, and it was so gut-wrenching to see that on TV. I can honestly say that I was standing when that scene actually happened, and my hands were on top of my head, and I couldn't believe that I was watching such disgustingness on regular television. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, oh my god, I was completely dumbfounded by the whole thing. Even though I kind of expected it, it's just when you see it from the pages of a comic book go live on a live action show, it's just night and day. So even though it was still predictable in a way that you knew that someone was going to die, or maybe possibly Glenn was going to die, it still impacted me a lot. Okay? So now, what does this do for the show going forward? Well, I think for the show going forward, this really closes a chapter in The Walking Dead, and it sets a new chapter going forward. We can see at the end of the episode that Rick sits there and looks at a walker or a roamer, or whatever you want to call them, you know, based off of how you learn what these characters were, is that he gets in the RV, he looks at it, and it's like looking at a regular person. It's like nothing. It's like flies flying around, you know, and you're swatting at them. That's basically what these zombies has become. And you got to think in Rick's psyche here going, man, I wish the zombies were the only problem in this world, because we've learned to adapt it to it. And now he's got to learn how to deal with Negan and all the other threats that surrounds him. So again, even though this episode was, you know, a lot about the death, it really was the breaking of Rick Grimes. It was really to set him in his place. It was interesting to see his psyche change, because, like Negan said, he was the king shit, and he's almost addicted to it, and he doesn't know how to handle not being in control. And it really took a lot for Negan to break him. It had to sit there and threaten to cut off his own son's arm to possibly do it. Now, when I was watching this episode, I'm sitting there going, holy shit, he had this axe in his hand, Negan did, at one point, and he cleaned it, and I thought he was going to cut off Rick's arm at one point. But then they wound up shifting it over and possibly doing it to Carl. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, is Carl going to get his arm chopped off too? The kid's already got shot in the chest. He got shot in the eye. He got a concussion. Now they're going to chop off his arm. I'm like, talk about traumatized. It would have been the interesting route to see this. But nevertheless, that's what it took to break Rick. And that's really what this episode was about. A closing of a chapter, getting ready to begin a new chapter on how they deal with Negan and how they survive with him. And the end of the episode was really well done because of Maggie, of what she says. And she says we have to stand up, we have to fight. And that's what I said last year, is when this is a real character development type of aspect for Maggie. It makes her stronger. It makes her the leader that she is today in the comic books. And it was a great episode. I'm not disappointed whatsoever. You know, a lot of people are saying out there, oh, they should have showed who got killed, you know, last season, which I was part of those people. But once this episode started, I automatically gravitated to it. I was at the edge of my seat, and I overlooked everything, and I had a blast with it. This was great. As a hardcore Walking Dead fan, I couldn't really have asked for anything more. Great episode. Guys, leave me in the comments below. Tell me what you thought of this episode. Were you happy? Were you sad? Were you bored? Were you didn't care? Just tell me where you stand on the whole series in general. And guys, as always, I will be covering The Walking Dead Season 7 each and every week this year once again. And fans, until the next comic book review or review in general, this is Mike Spider Slayer signing off. Take care, guys. See you soon. Bye.